Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be creating this mushroom pendant. You can use any type of stone that you want, any type of beads. I have 8mm and 10mm stone beads at the bottom, and then 6mm and 8mm stone beads on this smaller sized. You can use any pear shape or teardrop shape cab for this creation. I have this large Labradorite cab along with an 8mm Jasper bead and then a 10mm, actually this is a 12mm Dragon's Mane Agate bead that I'm going to be using for the stem. So let's get started. So I have about 12 inches of round dead soft copper wire, and it's 20 gauge. You can use 18 gauge as well if you do have a bigger pendant. I like to use 20 gauge with a lot of my creations. You're going to find the center of that 20 gauge wire, and you're just going to bend it to have equal sides and create a horseshoe like that. You can use your pliers too if you'd like. You're going to go about 6mm in on the flat portion of your cab, 6 to 8mm, and then you're going to bend it forward towards the round polished portion of your cab. And then you can take it off, you can take the cab off, and then you just go a couple millimeters in on that bent portion, and you're going to fold it outwards on each side. Just like that. And then I'll show you on this pendant as well. It's just that little loop on the back of the pendant. So then you take your cab and then you can bend it around your cab. And you can do this on a flat surface as well if you're more comfortable doing that. You can press down on the flat surface and then pull upward and pinch at the beginning, and then make sure it's even. So this is what your cage looks like so far. You can grab your pliers and make a more distinctive bend at the top where your bell is going to start, and then just pinch them together. You can grab 26 gauge dead soft copper wire. I use round, or else you can use half round as well on the bell. You grab the end of the wire and you just hold it with your finger just like that, and then you wrap it about 1.5 inches to 2 inches all the way up to the top, and you just keep looping it, the single loop. So once you have looped that 26 gauge wire all the way up I did about 1.5 inches, you're going to get your pliers and cut off the edges where the back of the cab will be, so that you can tuck the end wires in just like that with your pliers. Okay, and then you can grab your finger or a pencil or a large marker, I should say, to bend the bell downwards towards the horseshoe so that it is the back of your pendant. And then grab the extra wires and loop through your cab spacing. And then kind of even it out if it's a little uneven at the top, so that the two ends of the 26 gauge are right next to each other. And then you're going to pull all the way forward so that those end wires loop through that hole. You're going to separate the wires just like that, and you're going to bend them back down towards that horseshoe shape on both sides. So then it will look like that. Then you can straighten them out with your pliers or your fingers. So you can grab your finger and bend towards the edge on both sides, just like that. And then I like to either put the cab back in the pendant to check the sizing to make sure that it still fits in securely. And then you can hold it in place and bend those wires forward just like that on both sides. Then you'll grab you can take your cab out, and then you'll grab your wire and just loop the wire around that side wire right there. And I just loop it around once and bend down a little bit and cut off the excess to where I can still tuck that wire, that end wire in so that it doesn't poke you. And then you'll do the same thing on this side. Once you have both sides completed, it will look just like this. You're going to grab your cab and place it back in, just like that. You're going to grab about 3 inches of 20 gauge dead soft copper round wire. You're going to create a little wave pattern in the wire, or you can leave it straight. I like to use the wave because it makes it look more natural, like the mushroom folding with the gills. And then you're going to place it so that it is right in the center of that bend on your cab, because it is going to be pretty crucial that it is up high enough so that your cab doesn't flip out of the pendant, so that it is secure when you bend your pendant. You're going to find the center. So I'm going to go up about that far due to this being a pear shape, so it is a lot bigger on the bottom. Then you're going to fold downwards on each side, just like that. And then you're going to hold it in place with your thumb. You're going to grab your pliers and you're going to bend that wire in to secure it to the side. So loop it around. Just like that. And then you can pinch it. And you can loop it around once or twice on that side. And then since this is going to hold the pendant in, or hold the cab in place a little bit better, I am going to loop it around twice. But it is personal preference. It does stay pretty well as well with just one loop. And then recheck the wave, and then do the same thing on this side right there. Once you have both sides secure, I'm going to bend mine up just a little bit more, recheck that wave, bend it if you'd like, and then you're going to go to the ends and just cut those off and then tuck the remaining wire back towards your cab and hide it away, just like that. And then do the same thing on this side. Then we're going to start working on the gill portion right here. This aesthetically is my favorite portion of this pendant. It just looks so cool. So we're going to grab 26 gauge round dead soft copper wire. I have about 3.5 to 4 feet just pre-cut due to how big my space is going to be that I'm going to be working with. Just like that. Anyways, and so what you're going to do is you're going to loop it through that side wire and then hold with your pointer finger and just loop back down, or you can hold it with your thumb. Loop back down. Then you're going to grab the end piece and loop it around once more. I like to do about 5 loops going down on the sides, 5 to 6 loops, and then we're going to start our gills. So once you do have the 6 loops right there on your side or base wire, you're going to grab the end of the wire and you're going to go the opposite way that you were looping this side. So we were going in like that. So now we're going to go over that 20 gauge on the top and loop it around twice. So there's once. And then loop it around one more time. It is kind of a lot of wire to work with, but after a little while you will get used to it. There's one more time. So just like that. And then you're going to go back and do another 5 to 6 loops on that side or base wire right there. Once you have the 6 loops again, you're going to grab the end wire and do the exact same thing to create that gill-like look. So then you're going to go over, pull tightly, you can kind of use your fingers to guide it as well while you're still holding that pendant in. Just like that, and then loop it around one more time. And then you can leave the gills a little loose as well so that you can later on go in with your pliers and create like a wavy look. And then you're going to go back and do the same thing 2 more times until you reach the beginning of your horseshoe secure wire right there. So you can see here that I did loop around 6 more times right there. And then what you're going to do is, in order to skip over that horseshoe, you're going to grab your wire and then do the same thing on the top like you've been doing with those gills. But you're going to leave some extra wire right there that I normally just kind of bend over a little bit, just like that. And then loop it one more time at the top. And then do the same thing on the other side, just like that. And then loop under. While leaving a little bit of excess wire so that you can't tell that that gap is even there. And then you're going to loop it 6 times, make a gill, loop it 6 times up until you get to the end portion. Once you have the rest of the gills created, you're going to weave that 26 gauge all the way up until you hit the other 20 gauge wire. And then what you're going to do is you're going to loop under that wire. Now, instead of over, you're going under, and then you're going to do the same single loop that you did on the bottom, but on the top until you reach your first gill. So now that you have the 26 gauge wire looped all the way around that 20 gauge wire up until your first gill, you can take the cab out too at this point, if that makes it easier for looping your wire around that 20 gauge wire. And then what you're going to do is you're going to grab the very end of your wire, and then you're going to loop in between the two 26 gauge wires. So see that gap that you left when you were looping it around the 20 gauge? You're going to loop with the end of your wire in that hole, and then loop under the 20 gauge wire and pull. And then you can just continue to wrap that 26 gauge wire up until you reach the second gill and do the same thing all the way to the end over here. And then when you do get done with the weaving, you can just cut off the excess wire and tuck it in as well so it doesn't poke you. So we'll grab the 20 gauge wire along with the 26 gauge wire and hold them together in place with your thumb and your pointer finger, and you're going to single loop that 26 gauge wire until you have about 7 to 7.5 inches of the 26 gauge looped wire on that about 2 feet of 20 gauge wire. I'm going to use about 8 inches just due to how big, it'd probably be about 7 to 8 inches due to how big the cab is that I am using. But with this cab, I only used 4 feet of the 26 gauge and about a foot to a foot and a half of the 20 gauge. Once you've completed the 26 gauge looped wire, you're going to grab about 6 inches of dead soft copper round wire. It'll be the 20 gauge for the middle of your coil wrap, and then make sure that you do have a little bit of extra wire at the ends just so that you have enough wire to secure the end of the coil onto that side wire as well. So you grab the 20 gauge and then the beginning of your 20 gauge that you have the 26 gauge connected to. And then I like to push this up a little bit just so that I don't have a whole lot of extra tail at the end. And then you're going to cross the two wires, and you can use your pliers as well if you need to. And then you're just going to keep coiling that wire up. And then if you do need to use your pliers, you can just hold on to the end of those two wires, the 20 gauge, and then continue to create the circular motion with the 26 gauge wire. Once you have that coiled completely, what you're going to do to end it is just coil it one more time with just the 20 gauge wire, and then you can just cut off the excess and then pinch down so that it does not poke you. And then you can do the same thing on the other side. Once that is completed, you're going to grab 26 gauge wire and coil it just at the end of that loop, that 20 gauge loop. Coil it once, and then you're going to go into the crease of the coils. All the way up until you reach the end, and then when you reach the end, you can grab the 26 gauge and then just loop it around like that, how you started it. And that is what it looks like completed. You're going to grab your pendant and you're going to go from the back. I need to move my wire up a little bit, but you're going to go from the back and you're going to cross the two wires just like that, and then you can cross it over once more or loop it over once more. So for this one you can loop it this way, or else you can loop it the other way if you want to hide your loop. So you can go like that, grab it, loop it over on that side, and then it will be hidden so that you won't be able to see that attachment point. And then you can loop it once more. Just like that. And then pinch it together, pull down, and cut off any excess that you need. And pinch down the edge so it doesn't poke you. And then you can fold this upwards like that, loop around the top of your pendant. I pinch my pendant or my coils so that they do lay a little flatter or flush to the stone. And then you're going to do the same thing on this side where you loop the wire around. And then loop it once more. Once you have the coil connected on both sides, you're going to grab 26 gauge wire and loop it around the back secure wire. I like to loop it around 3 times. So you have it wrapped around 3 times, and then you're going to go to the coil and loop it around the coil and come up through the middle of the coil and the cab, so in between each, and then loop it around twice on that coil. Pull to secure it a little bit better. Adjust it if needed. And then loop it around the bell and do the same thing on this side. And then attach it to the other secure wire and loop it around 3 times, and then cut off the extra tail on each side. And then once you cut off the extra tail, you'll be able to bend the end wires flush to your cab. To create the stem of the mushroom, so the bottom portion right here with the bead attachments, you're going to grab about 3 to 3.5 inches of 20 gauge wire. In order to measure it correctly, you do want the wire to be able to connect to those top 2 looped wires and still have enough space to connect 2 beads at the bottom. And so that's a pretty good way to measure it, is just hold the wire up in place and make sure that it is long enough for the beads and the attachment. You're going to grab 26 gauge wire and loop the 26 gauge wire around the 20 gauge wire as a single loop until you have completed this portion right here. So you do need it long enough for you to be able to place your 2 beads in there and have it completely looped around until the connection point to your gills. So with this pendant, I will be using about 2 inches of the coiled 26 gauge wire. You can just manipulate it with your fingers if needed. And then check the size. And then once they can nicely be put into the center of that loop, then you can put your stones down and then find the center point of your pendant and just press the 20 gauge through the 20 gauge on the bottom of your pendant, just like that, and then do that on the same or on the other side. And then you're going to bend that side down and then bend this side upwards to create the bottom of your pendant. And then with the end pieces of that wire, you're going to just lift up that loop and then place that 20 gauge wire in the center of the loop and then bend the 20 gauge wire down towards the stem, and then do the same thing on the other side. And then you're going to cut off the extra wire on both sides. Grab your pliers and loop it flush with the either your cab or the wire that leads up to the loop on both sides. And then you have it attached at the top to where it is sturdy. To attach the stone beads on the bottom of the stem, you're going to grab 2 separate sections of 26 gauge wire, and then you're going to loop the bead into the center of the wire and then place the stem on top and then bend up on both sides and loop the wire through the hole of the stem 3 times. Once you have that looped, you can grab your pliers and cut off the extra wire and tuck the wire in. And then do the same thing on the other side. And then you will repeat those instructions for the top stone as well. Now we will grab about 4 inches of the 20 gauge dead soft copper wire. You'll grab the end of the wire with your pliers and create a circle or a loop, just like that. You can use the round nose pliers as well if you do have them. And then you'll grab the circle and then create a little bend, just like that. Grab the pliers and straighten out that side. Grab the pliers and do the same thing on the other side. Then you will hold on to the circle and then do the same thing on the other side, just like that. And then if it's not pointy enough, or if you would like it pointier, you can just pinch the edges just like that. And then you do the same thing on that side. Once you have that completed, you can go to the middle of the circle or the loop and bend upwards. And you can use the pliers as well to create a more distinctive line or curve. I'm going to fix this up just a little bit more. Then you'll grab your pendant and measure about where you want that circle. And then the middle of the coil, you're going to create just a little bend mark, just like that. When you have that finished, you're going to loop that through the coil and then twist it around the bail and then twist it up right there as well. And then you can cut off the extra just right there and then bend the end wire in between your two bail wires, just like that. You'll grab the 26 gauge wire and loop it through the coil and through the side of your eye as well, and then hold it with your pointer finger and loop it back through. Then you can connect it to this wire right here, or else you can connect it to the back secure wire just by looping the 26 gauge wire around the 20 gauge wire. Just like that. And then you can loop it around once more and cut the edges off, and then press the edges towards the cab so it's flush with the cab, and then you can do the same thing on the other side and it will keep your eye from moving or bending. And here's your finished pendant. Make sure you like, share, comment this video if you enjoyed it.